our next category is German Expressionism, which I know sounds like a lot, but the Germans in the 1920s and early 30s had a very distinctive style of film that's been named German Expressionism, and it has inspired lots and lots and lots of other directors. Any sort of artsy film that you've probably seen, somewhere deep down, either they were inspired by German Expressionism or they were inspired by somebody who was inspired by German Expressionism.
Well, a couple of these movies even show up in rock music videos.
Yes.
So when you go and you watch these, you may say, oh, I've seen that before. That's what that's from.
Yes.
Well, we're going to start off with this guy right back here.
It is a very kind of creepy movie.
It is. Roger Ebert said this was the first true horror film of all time.
Yes. It is the sort of thing that it's good to watch. It's not gory or anything, but it's definitely creepy, and you probably don't want to watch with the lights off.
The basic plot is about this carnival performer,
yes,
Dr. Kaeleigh, and his somnambulist, who's the tall man in the photo there, named, I'm going to say, Caesar.
Yes.
Caesar, some kind of German form of Caesar.
Yes.
Who is basically a somnambulist, is a sleepwalker.
Yes.
He sleeps all the time. Except when the good doctor wakes him up to do a show at the carnival, or maybe something a little more nefarious.
Yes, because the good doctor is not so good and has hypnotized Caesar into doing all sorts of nasty things that we're not going to say because that would ruin the movie. But this is one of the first movies we've talked about that was color tinted. It was not colorized,
yes,
like a modern day movie where it's in color, but it was, entire scenes were tinted in different colors
to kind of give it a different mood.
give it a different mood. And the backgrounds in this, I'm pretty sure there is no right angles in this entire film.
Yeah, even a door.
Even
something
doors
simple like a door.
are like askew. And the way I described the background in some of the carnival scenes is it's sort of like if Tim Burton designed a Dr. Seuss cartoon background or designed Whoville. Because it is both. It's both. This got this sort of animated quality to it, but also this sort of weird, dark quality to it.
Now, to me, this movie reminds me of another one that I like, Carnival of Souls.
Yes.
Which is another cult classic from,
the 60s.
About 40 years later.
Yeah.
But it just occurred to me, fans of The Nightmare Before Christmas might enjoy this movie.
And an interesting thing is, the actor who plays the somnambulist, Caesar, the actor's name was Conrad Veidt. And if you've ever seen the movie Casablanca, you've seen him about 20 years older. He played the head German officer in Casablanca. And he actually fled Nazi Germany with his wife, because his wife happened to be Jewish. And then the rest of his career in Hollywood, he ended up getting cast as Nazis.
One of the things that's really interesting about it, there's been some other movies like this, but it's one of those movies that has bookends.
Yes.
It's got a little something in the beginning before we get into the heart of the movie, and they come back to that at the end. Yes. And it really casts the movie in an entirely different light. If you were to trim the bookends off, and I wouldn't be surprised if there are some versions like that floating around out there, it becomes a completely different movie.
Yes. Because especially the bookend at the end completely subverts what you think's been happening.
Yes.
And so you think you'll be going through, you'll think you'll know what's happening. Then you get to like the last few minutes and everything gets completely flipped.
The next one of our German Expressionist movies is one you've probably heard of.
Yes, Nosferatu. And it is an unofficial adaptation of Dracula. It's unofficial because they didn't ask the estate of, what's the author's name?
Bram Stoker.
Of Bram Stoker for permission. And then they made it, and then they got sued.
And they actually were ordered it seems extreme today,
to destroy all the prints.
But
all of your copy.
The interesting thing about that to me is, okay, so the court basically killed this movie.
Yes.
And yet it rose from the dead like a vampire.
Yes.
To have a life after death.
Yes.
Because some prince survived, and it today it's considered a classic.
Yes, and there are actually a couple different versions of this floating around. The basic plot line's the same, but in a first bid to try to make it so the Stoker estate would not sue them as much, they changed some of the inner titles and character names. So we don't have Dracula, we have Count Orlok. And we slightly changed where things are taking place. Instead of England, I believe it's like in Germany.
Well, in Dracula, he goes to London, doesn't he?
Yes.
In Nosferatu, he goes to some other city
To
in Germany.
Munich,
But there's
maybe,
actually
or someplace.
plague going on there.
Yes.
And the Count Orlok doing his thing gets blamed on the plague initially.
Yes. And Nosferatu is not actually named for the main vampire. Nosferatu is a word for vampire. So the movie is called pretty much Vampire, not Dracula. Count Orlok is Dracula, but it's still really interesting.
Several years later, maybe 20, 25 years later, another studio, not Universal, made a vampire movie with Bela Lugosi.
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted to treat it like a sequel to Dracula, but of course they didn't have the rights to that. Universal did. So they called it Return of the Vampire.
Yes.
And Bela Lugosi plays a character that's very much like Dracula, except they give him a different name.
Yeah, so this movie came out 9 years before the Universal Dracula with Bela Lugosi. And you've probably heard of Nosferatu, and if you have watched or have kids who have watched SpongeBob, you've seen Nosferatu. Because SpongeBob looks and says, Nosferatu, and Nosferatu's turning on and off the lights.
There
which
you
is
go.
Quite humorous.
Yeah, it's sort of funny that Nosferatu would turn out to be a humorous character in a bit with SpongeBob. One of the differences between Count Orlok and Count Dracula is Count Dracula is always this sort of handsome, seductive character, and there's all those undertones of sex.
Yes.
And Count Orlok is not
creepy monster.
Yeah, he's a creepy monster. He's sort of rat-like.
Yes, and
in his appearance.
I believe that it is the movie Nosferatu that first starts the whole vampires die in sunlight thing.
That's true.
And because that's not in Dracula.
Because
he's running all over London in Dracula. So.
There you go. One interesting final note. This movie is known for being rhythmic and poetic.
Yes.
The director actually used a metronome to keep all the blocking, basically, on pace.
Yes. That's one thing you can do on a silent film, because no one's going to be listening to having audio for it anyways.
There you go. Moving along here, this is probably, when you think of silent movies, the movie that probably comes to mind most for a lot of people. And there are so many iconic images from it.
Yes.
And this is one of the ones that finds its way into rock music videos.
Yes. This movie, if I remember correctly, this shows up in the video for Radio Gaga by Queen, among other things.
And the movie we're talking about
is Metropolis.
There are a lot of different versions of this movie out there.
Yes, yes.
Because the longest version, the restored version, what we might call a director's cut today, is about 2.5 hours long.
Yes, and that was only actually put together in the last few years. Because if I remember right, someone found some missing pieces, because this movie has been edited by more people than I can even think of, were found someplace in like Brazil or something, and they're in a slightly different ratio, so if you're watching it, you can tell when they've added in these pieces, because the size of the screen gets slightly different. And the focus and the quality of the film is slightly different. It gets a little grainy, so you can see the little white blobs floating around it. But I believe only in the last 10 years or so they actually found some of the missing pieces.
Now that was unintentional, of course, because they were restoring
Yes.
The movie.
They were restoring it, and it was one of these things of, hey, we're restoring this film. You have copies of it. We would love to see them just to see if you've got any missing pieces. And they were thinking they might catch 15 seconds here, 10 seconds there. And they found a copy, or part of a copy, that had scenes that had been cut out since probably 1927.
Now, some of the imagery here, they actually had in mind New York City, but there's a real combination of Gothic and opera and futuristic architecture that creates this sort of one-of-a-kind, iconic look.
Not unlike the way Gotham City looks in the first Tim Burton Batman.
Actually, it's very reminiscent of that, and I wonder if that was done on purpose. Because, you see the cityscape, and it's got all these tall, like, Art Deco buildings with biplanes flying around them, and, like, elevated trains, and it has this both very futuristic and very sort of old-time feel to it.
What sometimes now is referred to as retro future.
Yes. But at that point, it wasn't retro yet.
There you go. They didn't know that's what they were doing. And the most iconic image from this, would you agree, is the robot.
Yes, yeah. If you Google Metropolis, you're going to probably see an image of the female robot, and that is, both something central to the film and sort of the image that's come out of this film as being what this film is.
Interestingly enough, in the story, the original version of the story, the female robot was the inventor's attempt to recreate an old girlfriend.
Who had shunned him and gone and married one of the rich guys.
Yeah. So, if you're a fan of movies from the 80s and you've seen Weird Science, this idea of, or even Bride of Frankenstein, this idea of using science to make some sort of woman fall in love with you, nothing new under the sun.
Yes, and and this film has the basic thing is about there's a small group of people who are very rich, run the city, live in opulent towers with giant gardens. The majority of people are, stuck in the underground, working at these in these machines that are like devouring gods that are eating them alive.
In a way, some of the themes are a little bit about, like, a little Kafka-esque, like Metamorphosis.
Yes. Or, in many ways, it also reminds me a bit of The Time Machine, where you've got, the happy people who live up on the surface, and you have the sort of underclass and whatnot, but, not quite as much. It's interesting that the number of things that get drawn from there.
Recurring themes.
And also you've got sort of the star-crossed lovers, because you've got this woman from the lower class who is seen once by the rich son of the ruler, and he falls madly in love with her, and, pretty much goes and sees how the other half lives, and,
They didn't meet on eHarmony?
They didn't, no.
Okay.
She took a group of kids up to see nature for once in their lifetime, and he fell madly in love with her. So...
Well, it's got to happen sometime.
Yes.
You have to meet people somehow or other.
Yes.
Okay, and that wraps up our section on German Expressionism.
Yes.
And so I believe we're moving in next to the dramas.
Yes. So our first drama is the movie Intolerance. And you want to tell us a little bit about the director?
Well, D.W. Griffith, a lot of people consider him one of the great directors of all time.
Yes.
Not just of the silent era. We really have him to thank for the epic, what we might call the modern film epic.
Because this is a long movie.
Yeah, this really falls into that category. He, along with Charlie Chaplin and Douglas Fairbanks and his wife, Mary Pickford, were the ones who founded the United Artists Studio.
Yes. Yes. And so, how long is this movie? Because we're talking...
197 minutes.
Yes. When we watched this, we watched it over 2 days. I highly recommend that.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's so long, it actually is 4 stories interspliced with each other. And all the stories are about intolerance and why it's bad. And the 4 stories take place during the fall of Babylon, the death of Christ, the St. Bartholomew's Day Massacre in France in the 1600s, and then a story that is sort of contemporary to the time, so 19 teens or so, about people who are trying to help the lower classes and actually end up destroying this one woman's life. So
yeah, and Griffith, he really had some strong opinions.
Yes.
About people like so-called social reformers. And,
yes, the social reformers do not come out well in the contemporary story.
Yeah, initially that's what he was going to make, was just a contemporary story, and it was going to be called The Mother and the Law. Mm-hmm. But I'm not exactly, at some point he decided, well, let's make a little bit bigger thing out of this.
Yes.
Like maybe 4 times bigger.
Yes. And so one of the early famous actresses who was in this is Lillian Gish. And she played, and interspersed between these, you have this sort of tying of this woman rocking a baby. And Lillian Gish is the one rocking the baby. So she shows up a lot, but she doesn't really have any plot. But one of the things that this movie is well known for is that it had huge sets. So for the Fall of Babylon story, they built giant walls of Babylon that were like 300 feet high. And they had thousands and thousands of extras in some of the scenes for this. And these walls were left standing after the movie and were there for like 15 years until someone tore them down.
They were actually wide enough on the top that you could drive a chariot across them.
Yes, and we actually see that in the film. So, he lived under the adage of go big or go home, and he went big.
I'm going to qualify this next one a little bit, and by saying, if you really feel like you must watch a Rudolph Valentino movie.
Here's a Rudolph Valentino movie.
Yeah, the one that at least I know him best for, and has become either iconic or a bit of a cliche, depending on how you care to look at it, is The Sheik.
Yes. It came out in 1921 from Paramount, and it is a very interesting movie. Let's just say that. The basic plotline is, I fall in love with this woman, and I'm going to brainwash her into loving me.
There you go.
There's a lot of sexism in this movie, but ironically enough, being made in 1921, everyone in the movie seems perfectly okay with the fact that the majority of the characters are actually Muslim. There was no Islamophobia in this movie. And it has some lovely intertitles, because the intertitles have like Middle Eastern illustrations on the corners. So you get some lovely palm trees and things like that. But it's a little bit of an, oh my, did they actually just do what I think they just did?
Right. It does not hold up to the modern standards of what's appropriate behavior between a man and a woman.
Yes.
Perhaps by 1921 standards, this was considered sexy.
Perhaps.
By 2021 standards, it's incredibly sexist.
Yes. And this movie actually inspired the 1920 song, The Sheik of Araby, which will, the fact that that's the name of a song inspired by this will also tell you a little bit about, it was like, well, they were okay with everyone being Muslim. It was also, the foreigner, they are so exotic.
Yes.
Interestingly enough, Sheik of Araby is actually one of the songs the Beatles performed when they auditioned for Decca Records.
Oh, I forgot that.
Famous audition where the record company actually turned down the Beatles.
Yes.
Sheik of Araby was one of the songs that they performed.
One of the curious notes about this, we talk about lost films.
Yes.
A lot about how these movies were made has been lost to time, too.
Yes.
For this one, for instance, no, they did not go on location to Saudi Arabia or Morocco or anything. But they're not quite sure, was it California or, believe it or not, New York State?
I'm leaning towards California by what the outside looks like, but who knows? Maybe there's some sand dunes in New York I don't know about.
Well, apparently there are. Apparently there's a state park or some big geological feature in New York State that's known for its sand dunes.
But the fact that, they don't know where this film was made is rather interesting.
Well, moving right along here from The Sheik, the last one we have is Battleship Potemkin.
Yes. In my notes I wrote it's a Russian film. That's slightly lying. It's a Soviet film. It came out in 1925. So it was made in the Soviet Union and is pretty much a piece of Soviet propaganda. But it's a very important film of Soviet propaganda and has some very impressive film techniques in it. This movie was made in 1925 for the 20th anniversary of its topic, which was when you think of the Russian Revolution, you think of 1917. That's when the Soviets came to power, for the most part. But it was actually not the first Russian Revolution. The first one was in 1905. And this revolution ended up getting more participation by the everyday people under the Tsarist regime. So that's when they got the Duma, which was a House of Representatives sort of thing. They had the right to gather, to complain, things like that.
In some ways, it created like a constitutional monarchy.
Yes. It wasn't a very successful constitutional monarchy, which is why they overthrew it 12 years later. But, and during that 1905 revolution, there was a mutiny on the Battleship Potemkin. That's the name of the movie. And so this movie is sort of a celebration of, that great revolutionary zeal that led to that mutiny.
There you go. The people rising up and whatnot.
Yes.
The most famous scene, though, doesn't actually take place on the ship.
No.
It takes place on what's called the Odessa Steps.
Yes.
The ship is in the port of
Yes.
Odessa, and the people are coming out to support and cheer
for the mutineers.
The sailors that
Yes.
are mutinying on the ship. And then the Tsar sends out his troops.
Yes.
And the famous scene of people running in panic and getting shot and dying, and then the Tsar's troops just calmly
lockstep walking towards them shooting.
Right. There's another scene in Dr. Zhivago, which is similar. One of the characters is leading a protest march, and the Tsar's cavalry turns on they're pretty much just sent out to mow them down.
Yes.
You know.
And if you've ever seen the movie The Untouchables, there's the scene where they're in the big gunfight in the train station, and the baby carriage goes down. It starts going down the steps. That was actually inspired by a similar shot in Battleship Potemkin during the Odessa Steps scene.
Maybe the most iconic shot of the whole movie.
Yes. Yes.
I remember watching the movie when I was in college, taking a mass media class, and all that on the Odessa Steps, and particularly that carriage going down. And it's even more effective in the sort of film speed that they shot at.
Yes.
Back in the silent film era.
Yes.
It's even more effective because it creates sort of that jerky kind of motion.
Yes.
Thank you again, Kaeleigh, for bringing your historic expertise to this enterprise.
Thank you for inviting me.
And thank you all for joining us. See you again next time.
If you've enjoyed 12 silent movies you ought to see, be sure to read the companion piece, 5 Lessons Writers Can Learn from Silent Movies, on the R.J. Post author Facebook page. And check out Mystery Girl, a murder mystery involving silent film star Marguerite Moore, and my book, Lion Taming, Dating, and Other Dangerous Endeavors. Lion Taming, Dating, and Other Dangerous Endeavors is available on Amazon and at these independent Nebraska bookstores: Susan's Books and Gifts in Aurora, Chapters Books and Gifts in Seward, Brancy and Finch Bookshop in Lincoln, and The Bookworm in Omaha. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to like, follow, and share the R.J. Post author Facebook page and subscribe to my YouTube channel. What's all the noise about silent movies? The girls and boys all love silent movies. I trade my toys to watch silent movies. What's all the noise about silent movies? What's all the noise about Nosferatu? He did the things that any vampire ought to. They sued his fangs, but he just stomped on right through. What's all the noise about Nosferatu? What's all the noise about Buster Keaton? In that big storm he took an awful beating. His girlfriend's dad was just a nasty cretin. What's all the noise about Buster Keaton? What's all the noise about robbing the train? They blew that strongbox with a big blame. That posse gave him such an awful pain. What's all the noise about robbing the train? What's all the noise about Kaeleigh? His sleeper knew that he should never tarry. He took that girl like she was Mata Hari. What's all the noise about Kaeleigh? What's all the noise about Charlie Chaplin? He ate his shoe before they caught him napping. He wrote the script on the back of a napkin. What's all the noise about Charlie Chaplin? What's all the noise about intolerance? In Babylon they did a hop and dance. Those Huguenots, they didn't stand a chance. What's all the noise about intolerance? What's all the noise about silent movies? The girls and boys all love silent movies. I trade my toys to watch silent movies. What's all the noise about silent